The year is 2113. Everyone wears a gray jumpsuit. They have shaved heads. No one owns anything. There's no art. There's no images. There's no graphic pictures of any kind. There's no video games. Everyone's scared of everything all the time. Someone commits a crime. They called someone a naughty word. They said, "You're ugly." They were arrested. I feel like at the current pace of how things are going, that's where we're headed. It sounds extreme. That's the point. We look at these old dystopian novels like 1984, Fahrenheit 451, Brave New World, and we talk about how that's not going to happen, that never happened, but it is happening. And the joke going around right now, there's a meme showing a Venn diagram of the three circles of the dystopian novels with us right in the middle, because the reality is there is a little bit of everything. I've got one of those, I can't say its name or it'll turn on, but you know those devices where you say their name and yeah, those things spy on you. Maybe they don't really, I don't know, it's contentious, but there have been instances where people's conversations have been accidentally recorded and sent out to other people. And it's a complicated issue when it comes to voice control technology. But yes, mass surveillance outside of the fear of certain at-home devices is real. It really is. We have metadata searches, we have the NSA, we have the Five Eyes Spy Club, that's all happening. We have people who are arrested and falsely charged. The government power, it's, getting stronger. We have horrific acts of violence from psychopaths who live stream what they do. It's another key aspect of the insanity and the nightmarish dystopia we live in. And to make it all worse, we have people demanding that we build a world just like Fahrenheit 451, just like 1984. They demand it. And these people have power. And it's horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. Here's a story. Sky New Zealand stops airing Sky News Australia after Christchurch massacre coverage. My understanding is that Sky News Australia is owned by Rupert Murdoch. A lot of people on the left are cheering for this, saying, good. Take them off the air. Why? Heavens. They were showing distressing footage. My advice? Don't watch it. Unfortunately, that doesn't matter because the content was objectionable. And now there's a small minority of people demanding that the private companies have the ability to restrict and censor information. The people in mass, they cry out, save us, to these massive billionaires. And they say, but it's not government censorship. It's what we want. We want the information restricted. But New Zealand is arresting people for sharing information. They have made information illegal. New Zealand has banned the Terror Suspects Manifesto. Why? Why? You can download the Anarchist's Cookbook. You can read Hitler's book. Why not the manifesto? Well, they say that it was designed to radicalize, or something to that effect. They say there is an important distinction to be made between hate speech, which may be rejected by many right-thinking people, but which is legal to express, and this type of publication, which is deliberately constructed to inspire further murder and terrorism, said New Zealand's chief censor, David Shanks. New Zealand has a chief censor. These countries aren't like the U.S. The United States broke away from the British Empire. And these former, I don't know the history of the Commonwealth, but they don't have the same protections we do. And thus, they've gone down a different path than the United States. And I have to wonder if there's a reason why the United States is considered by many to be the greatest country in the world, why it became so powerful. And it was because you were free to share information, period. One of the most important tenets, is my understanding, in the hacker community. Although a weird thing has happened where many hackers I know, maybe they're not, really hackers, have begun to embrace the restriction of information. It's nightmarish. Spreading the mosque shooting video is a crime in New Zealand. Sharing the video of what happened is a crime. It's just information. Why is that a crime? What's the justification for telling people you're not allowed to know what happened? I tweeted this. How the F are people justifying creating a world like the ones depicted in Fahrenheit 451 in 1984? You realize that censorship and banning information was a key aspect of the dystopian nightmare, right? New Zealand is blocking websites. Yes, they blocked websites, the ISPs in New Zealand. I responded to Jermaine Clement, the actor who tweeted back at me. Actually, I should refresh this. I don't know if, because he said, oh, okay, well, where is he at? Oh, here we go. Jermaine Clement is the actor. I think he's a funny dude. He's made really, really great content, and I think I have respect for him. So this is meant more as an honest critique. He said, "Those didn't really happen. We're living in the dystopian nightmare now, and it's people broadcasting themselves as they murder dozens of innocent people." Yes, let's talk about this. Those didn't really happen. I know. That's the point. The point is they didn't happen, and we should be concerned if they start happening. And there are actually people who hold up signs in Berkeley with free speech right now. They set it on fire. They say that free speech shouldn't be allowed anymore. The social media platforms where our public discourse happens has banned free speech. I'm not exaggerating. There is no legal distinction between hate speech and free speech in the United States. I'm no fan of hate speech. I do not like people being disrespectful and saying horrifying things on social media. There is a reason why we have that right. And one of the best examples I give time and time again is how hateful the left was in the 2000s, the 90s and 2000s against Christians to fight for gay rights, and how hateful the Christians were in many ways to the gay community. Not everybody. Not every liberal was hateful. Not every Christian was hateful, but there was a lot of hate. And ultimately, one side won out the political debate, and the LGBT community won tremendous rights in this gay marriage legalized nationwide, or unrestricted, I should say. Should we now enter a world where we are watching in the UK Muslims chanting shame at the LGBT community? That to me is scary, because they're allowing it. And I get it. It's kind of like what I said, that they allowed some hate, which led to the rights of a certain marginalized group. The difference now is we're seeing this hate in the UK be wielded against people to curtail their rights. Now, I'm not specifically talking about shutting down the LGBT curriculum. I'm talking about the protester who specifically said that telling people it's okay to be gay was shameful. That is nightmarish. And that's the government being built. The idea that I believe it's the second largest religion in the planet, maybe not the second, but at least the second largest Abrahamic, one of the largest, 1.6 billion people worldwide, is oppressed and therefore should be protected. But if you dare speak up against them in the UK, it's hate speech. And now we can see what's happening in New Zealand. ISPs are shutting down websites. Book distributors are banning books from Jordan Peterson, but allowing white nationalist books to stay up. They are allowing you to, it makes literally no sense. This is not about stopping objectionable content. It's about power. It's about certain individuals saying certain political ideas that are not even extreme should be banned. They don't care if you read Mein Kampf, because Mein Kampf is old. But they certainly care if you read a self-help book by Jordan Peterson. Why? Maybe reading Jordan Peterson might make you more individualistic. It might actually de-radicalize you and bring you back to reality. And they can't have that. Identitarians on both sides want people fighting. And it's why identitarians on both sides hate Jordan Peterson. What I said, what Jermaine Clement said about living in the dystopian nightmare, about how it's people broadcasting themselves as they murder dozens of innocent people, I don't disagree. I absolutely agree. That is a horrifying, the epitome of horrifying what's being done here. But the thing is, these acts have happened long before today. In fact, my understanding is that violent crime and violence like this was much worse. I would say that when there was a disabled, I believe it was an autistic white boy, was kidnapped and tortured on Facebook Live, we knew what was coming. This isn't the beginning. But I have to wonder why only now they start to restrict information. To see a country like New Zealand determine that it is a crime to share information. Yes, objectionable information, call it what you want, but it is information. To me, that's insane. But back to my main point. People are justifying creating a world like the ones depicted in 1984 and Fahrenheit 451. And Jermaine Clement and others talk about how, well, it's not the government doing it. It's something totally different. Well, let's ask Mr. Ray Bradbury himself. Ray Bradbury, who wrote Fahrenheit 451, he said, "No, we, not government, are enslaving ourselves." Now, I'll be completely honest. I have not read, I read 1984 a long time ago. I haven't read Fahrenheit 451. I have read some of it. But I'm not highlighting these stories to act like I'm some kind of expert on what he really meant or what you should interpret by it. I use these books more as a symbol, and I absolutely want to recognize the absurdity and the criticism coming my way for citing them without having actually read them, at least in recent time. Animal Farm I thought was incredible too. The point I'm trying to bring up, while making sure that's clear, I'm not trying to act like I'm an expert, is that these books were symbols. These movies are symbols. These ideas are symbols. V for Vendetta, it's a symbol. They represent a world we do not want to live in. That's it. They were meant to represent villainy, evil, despotism. Many people believe that Fahrenheit 451 is about the government. Well, at least according to LA Weekly, if you trust it, back in 2012, citing an interview that Ray Bradbury did with their publication, he said that it was more about how we were slowly enslaving ourselves. Keeping in mind, government is partly us. It is. The government is, created by the people, as are most corporations. Sometimes governments become tyrannical. They become entrenched in corruption. But the general idea from at least some of the quotes in Fahrenheit 451 that I highlight, it's not necessarily that, well, yes, it was the government who had the firemen and there was the book burnings on site and things like that. It was an issue of, there's one passage I read in a video I did a couple days ago on my main channel. Everyone was offended. And because everyone was offended, they decided to stop selling books. And there's a quote where they say, no wonder the books didn't sell. Because the smaller the minority, the more easy it was to offend them. And then people wouldn't, it was bad. So people didn't want to read books. They didn't want to consume more in-depth content. They wanted simple comic books with pictures and simple words and TV screens. They wanted just to be told what to think and believe. It's easier that way. And it's mind-blowing to me that we actually have people today. We actually have activists who claim to be liberals. They're not liberals. They're not liberal at all. Demanding censorship, the banning of speech, the restriction of knowledge. Welcome to the nightmare dystopia. I've made several videos about it, but we're here. We are. I was really surprised to find out how quickly this tweet got traction, because for me, it's just an outburst of emotion. I was, yesterday at 10 p.m., I think I was watching Family Guy. Family Guy was about to come on or something like that. And I was just thinking about all the activists who are demanding censorship on social media, the digital public square that Jack Dorsey himself has called it. I believe he's called it that. And they're saying ideas should be restricted. The same people who claimed to fight for the freedom of the people in the Arab Spring, while hackers fought to secure the ability for them to share information. The same people who would criticize Turkey and Iran and China for restricting information now defend the idea. You know what? Maybe I don't know Jermaine Clement. I don't know his politics. I know he's funny, and I think he's a good actor. I think he did really well in Men in Black. And What We Do in the Shadows, I think, is absolutely fascinating. I went to a screening and got to ask Mr. Jermaine a question about it. So I have tremendous respect for him as an artist. I can separate the art from the artist, but absolutely. But is this tweet meant to be a deflection or a defense? I don't necessarily want to say that. I think he's right. For one, both things he said are correct. Those didn't really happen. You're right, and we don't want them to. Creating a nightmarish dystopia is not the solution to a nightmare dystopia we're already in. You're just making it worse. And he's right. It is, in my opinion, a nightmare dystopia where social media is absolutely radicalizing people. But it's not just the right. It's creating echo chambers for the fringe left minority. The fringe weirdos on the left who are demanding censorship. On one side, you have those begging for 1984. On the others, you have people begging for an ethno-state. Both are nightmarish. Both are fringe. The problem is, only one has real power. Well, in my opinion, I absolutely think we must do everything we can to stop these lunatics who would commit an act like what we saw in New Zealand. Who wouldn't? What we saw in 1994, was it 94? The Oklahoma City bombing of the Federal Building. These people are out of their goddamn minds. By all means, stop them. And there is a challenge. There's a challenge in how much surveillance and how much security we need and how much freedom is curtailed by it. I think about it this way. Security is easily explained like armor, a bulletproof vest. On the low end, you have, like what, level 2 armor, a stab vest, not really going to do much for you in a gunfight. You can increase the armor. You can increase the weight. You can put ceramic plates in it. I actually have worn ceramic plate armor in certain countries where rifle fire was a serious threat. The stronger your armor is, the bulkier it is, the harder it is to move. Eventually, you figure out maybe we should just make a big metal box and put wheels on it. And then you actually end up with tanks, armor, artillery, gigantic machines that you can be protected inside of. Now, they're not perfect. They have weaknesses. But that's kind of the idea. The more security you have, the harder it is to move. And that's what happens in society. As more people, not necessarily like Jermaine, I don't know if he's advocating for this, but he's certainly deflecting from what I'm saying. I'm also confused why he wouldn't agree with me. So I kind of feel like him pushing back is in a sense a disagreement. But how do we solve the problem of fringe lunatics? I don't think we can. I really don't. I mean, artificial intelligence is improving, and maybe we can track these people better, and maybe we'll have pre-crime, which is also nightmarish, like Minority Report, another dystopian future where people are arrested before they even do anything wrong. It's a tough question. If you know someone will commit a crime, or there's an extremely high likelihood, what do you do? Ignore it. Well, we want to stop these people. I completely agree with Jermaine. It is a nightmare dystopia of what they're doing. Not just what we saw in New Zealand, but everything. The escalation, the violence, fringe lunatics taking guns and shooting people. Even the Hodgkinson guy, whatever his name is, in the baseball field shooting Scalise. All of this is nightmarish. Yes, let's stop it. How? How do we stop it while making sure that people have the right to know and the right to be free? That's the big challenge. Ultimately, I think where we only disagree is the level that people have a right to learn. Perhaps Jermaine thinks people shouldn't have a right to learn things. I don't know. I would be confused why anyone would think what I'm saying here is objectionable, but some people do. Those didn't really happen. And? Should they happen? Is that what you're implying, or do you think they won't happen? Well, they are. New Zealand has banned a piece of paper, a scrawling of text. They said it's going to incite people. You can't read it. You can't watch the video. Why? If people want to, they will. You can't stop it. But what's the result of this? In my opinion, I think it's only a matter of time before I'm not going to be making these videos anymore. I think it's only a matter of time. I mean, we're already seeing people banned. We're seeing people's livelihoods destroyed. Monkey Jones, what did he do wrong? He made objectionable content in a country where you're allowed to make objectionable content, and he broke no rules. And YouTube deemed his content advertiser friendly. For those that aren't familiar, Monkey Jones had 300,000+ subscribers on YouTube. And he made dark comedy. It was rather dark. That's legal. You're allowed to. In fact, it wasn't even against YouTube's rules. What did YouTube do? They Thanos'd him. They removed his channel without warning instantly. And anytime he tried to create a new channel, they'd remove that as well. But what kind of world is that? He didn't break the rules. He wasn't given a warning. His career was just destroyed overnight on a whim because a massive private company has too much power and control, and they've monopolized the market. I'll admit, I reap great benefits from the system that is YouTube. But I won't sit back when every single time the story comes up, I will mention the nightmare that is approaching. When certain ideas are being restricted, when we know from the data, which I've shown time and time again, that YouTube flows almost 2-to-1 from right to left, not the other way around. You are more likely to get a left-wing mainstream video than anything on the right. And they still scream at the top of their lungs that YouTube needs to censor more information. And as I pointed out in a video I made the other day, do you remember when cigarettes were healthy? Do you remember when they used to put in magazines, doctors recommend? What would you do to challenge the idea that cigarettes were good for you? What if today they genuinely believed cigarettes were still good for you? And every time you screamed they were bad for you and they caused cancer, people would laugh and say cigarettes don't cause cancer. That's insane. What makes you think cigarettes cause cancer today? Orthodoxy tells you so. The problem is not whether or not I believe something is right or wrong. The problem is who determines what is right or wrong and what is true. In the movie Interstellar, the teacher is convinced that the U.S. has never gone to the moon. The fake moon landing conspiracy became the prominent orthodoxy. And if you challenged that, you were considered to be a crazy person. You're allowed to be a crazy person. We need people to be, I'm saying crazy person in the metaphorical sense. We need people to have these fringe ideas because the homogenization of culture, of knowledge, All of it is bad. Diversity of information and perspective and opinion, all very important. What do I think is going to happen? I think we're going to enter a world where you're only allowed to believe what the corporations and the corrupt want you to believe. I lean left. I think left unchecked, laissez-faire capitalism leads to massive massive monopolies like Twitter, like Facebook, but they've created an interesting take on the monopoly. How do you break up Facebook? You can't. How do you break up Twitter? You can't. You can break up Google, but not YouTube, not the search engine. Google is a bunch of different companies, AdSense, AdWords, Google Ads, etc. But Google search, it can be removed from YouTube, but they're still the only thing people use for that particular task, for that particular function. Even if YouTube was removed from the equation, would it change anything? Perhaps not. So you can't really do anything to break up what Twitter is. It's just become ubiquitous. Perhaps then, at a certain point, when a tool becomes so ubiquitous and there is no alternative or no reason for an alternative, it becomes a utility. What could Twitter be broken up to do? What could you do with a competitor to Twitter? Nothing. Twitter is a platform for people to share ideas, share opinions, and communicate. There is no breaking that up. What makes Twitter work is that people are here and people are talking. If you split the company in two, what would you have? Two different smaller social networks that people wouldn't really want to use because the other people aren't there. So it doesn't make sense. Now we have our public discourse being controlled by private corporations. We have activists championing that these corporations have restricted access to information, that they're banning people for sharing things. And we have high-profile celebrities deflecting or defending the notion that we should have a world like 1984. Because it didn't happen anyway, right? And it's worse that murder happens. Well, I don't know which is worse, the restriction of information or murder. I think they're both horrifying. In fact, I would argue to an extent the murder is substantially worse. But there's a short-term gain and a long-term gain. In the short term, we have to worry about the murderers. Those things are immediate, high-velocity, high-impact moments of terror. But in the long term, we have to make sure we protect our minds and our culture and the ability to learn and understand what's happening in our world. That's what we are losing. We are taking we are taking our long-term losses for short-term gains, and it's short-sighted and it's dangerous. Restricting Jordan Peterson's book will do nothing. But at the same time, they allow Mao, Mein Kampf, all these other horrifying books. So clearly, there's no logic behind these actions. They ban one site but not another. They ban one book but not another. They banned this manifesto. Okay, but what about passages from it? What if it was rewritten? At what point do you stop? Let me wrap up here. I think you get it. There's more than enough evidence, in my opinion, that these things are legitimate. We've seen Kevin Hart lose a mainstream Oscar hosting gig because of old tweets. A major movie was displaced, was delayed. Granted, James Gunn was brought back. We are seeing shows be removed because of outrage. We are seeing politicians advocate for a bill so unpopular that the largest federation of labor unions in the United States has denounced it. Yet they're convinced they're right. Social media, in my opinion, is an amazing dystopian nightmare in and of itself. Something that probably wasn't predicted in this way because people didn't know the technology would exist. But here we are. High-profile celebrities can be shocked by one moment and say, because of that one moment, the government should have the power for decades to come to guarantee you don't learn about what happened. That is a dystopia that I don't want to be a part of. Well, I'll have another video at 1 p.m. I'll see you then.